we have some new Foodcritic rules. We also have some really nice bugs and some deprecations and things that are fixed. So I was just going to show off a few of those. I created a few different cookbooks here. One that has missing metadata, one that uses a different method of including a recipe, and then another one that has a custom resource in it. So I can show off these different things. So I'll start with the include recipe one. This is just a simple bug that came up that was kind of like, oh yeah, duh, we can fix that pretty quick. So if we run it against this cookbook, we get this error that says that we have a dependency that's not reflected in the cookbook's metadata. That's a cool little Foodcritic rule that's supposed to look and tell us if we have a bad, an include that we're trying to do that includes a third-party cookbook where we missed it, depending on that. Well, it looks like we're not actually depending on a third-party cookbook here. What we're doing is we're using that shortened form of including recipes that we introduced in Chef. And the problem is the way that Foodcritic parses this, it sees that as being a cookbook of name empty string. And empty string is not a dependency in the metadata, so empty string is, of course, not reflected in the metadata, and this Foodcritic rule should fire. So this was a pretty simple fix. Basically, if it starts with some double colons, then it's part of the cookbook, and don't care. So I have the new Foodcritic installed here, and I can just run the same thing, and now like magically it passes. So that's just a little cool one. So if people want to start using that, it'll actually pass Foodcritic. I imagine maybe somebody tried that and then realized that Foodcritic bombs on it and stopped using that. So we'll get some people using the cool new stuff. The other one is against the resource cookbook. So this is one that just annoyed me intensely because I had to exclude this in every single cookbook we ever wrote. And basically the idea here is that Foodcritic does not actually know what is a custom resource and what is an LWRP. It just has the ability to look at a resource and to look at a provider. And it would look at a resource and it would think that it was an LWRP, and it would say, hey, you didn't define your default action. But it doesn't know that custom resources don't need a default action. So this was totally a valid thing. And this is just a really simple custom resource we have here. It's just, some properties and an action. That is the default action. This should pass just fine. So under the new Foodcritic, this will just run just fine. And basically all we're doing is we're looking for a resource that instead of having attributes has properties and just saying, oh, it has properties, well, it must be a custom resource. So skip this entirety of this check because it's just not valid. So that'll make it a lot easier for people to include that fun stuff. I have another one that I forgot to actually make a demo recipe for. That's Foodcritic rule 23. And 23 was that you had conditional logic in your cookbook. So if you had a resource, like maybe this execute here, we have a not if in it. Foodcritic wanted you previously to write this conditional logic within the resource instead of putting it above the resource. That was definitely a preference thing, and there's a long thread of people that were going back and forth. There's definitely reasons for doing it this way. It shows up in reporting. There's definitely reasons for not doing it this way. You don't have to declare the resource. There's a little bit of a memory savings there. It doesn't show up in reporting. Maybe you don't want it. You get much cleaner conversion logs when you don't have all these kind of like skips on the not ifs. You just have like a giant single not if at the top, basically, that is around a set of resources maybe, and then that keeps it from actually showing up during the compile phase. So that rule is removed. If people want to write them this way, they're more than welcome to, and people can pull that rule into their own set of Foodcritic rules if they think that's a really cool one for their organization. But enough people thought it wasn't a good idea that we decided to get rid of that one. And then the last one is some cool new Foodcritic stuff. So I have this bad metadata cookbook here. Really? Well, I had this bad metadata cookbook here. I think I broke it. I'll just say what it was then. We have a set of new rules that for some reason aren't firing correctly. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm backwards. It is working. So that is the old Foodcritic. The old Foodcritic looks at this cookbook and looks at the metadata you have here and says, that's good enough. Looks good to me. You might see that we're missing a license. We don't really care about licenses with open source software. We're missing Chef version. So like, what does this run on? I have no idea. And we're missing the supports. So like, what platform does it run on? So now we have a piece of software here that is a questionable license, so I probably can't bring it into my organization. It has unknown information on what chef client it needs, and it has unknown information on what distribution it supports. So this is a cookbook that is probably not something that we should consider something that people should be sharing, right? Like with a little bit of work, this could totally show up correctly on Foodcritic or on the supermarket, and we could give people the proper information they need to consume this. So we have some new rules, just Foodcritic on bad metadata. And now we see that this is missing the chef version. It needs to support at least one platform, and we need the license keyword in that metadata. So this will be released maybe tomorrow, today. Then we can get it on supermarket, and then supermarket can start reporting on those. And this will obviously be in the next Chef DK, which will get people to start putting all that cool metadata in, which should super benefit people trying to pull stuff off a supermarket.